Thank you so much for joining us. We are doing something new and exciting with this season of No Longer Silent. This time, we are going to insert voices of other national leaders to help expand the conversation. We hope you enjoy this new feature and let us know what you think in the comments.
Damage from the deep cuts to Medicaid in President Trump's spending bill could extend far beyond rural hospitals.
This is just one in a series of many, many cuts we're seeing across health agencies across the country.
Billions of dollars are on hold nationwide.
A local nonprofit organization says recent cuts under President Trump's new spending bill will force them to cancel one of their programs.
Federal officials are cutting more than $11 billion from health organizations across the nation.
No Longer Silent. Advocacy leaders unmuted. Hello, and welcome to another episode of No Longer Silent. This episode is entitled Behind the Curtains, Barriers That Block Lifesaving Care. And today we have with us the beautiful, the brilliant Tiffany Westrich-Robertson. Say that 3 times, right?
Think about it for me.
Tiffany is the Executive Director of Ai Arthritis. Tiffany, welcome.
Well, thank you. I am so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, we are excited to having you. So what I like to do is instead of reading people's bios, I give you a couple of seconds to tap in here and tell us exactly who you are. And more importantly, tell us, what is Ai Arthritis?
Absolutely. So I founded Ai Arthritis, which is short for International Foundation Autoinflammatory Arthritis. So you can see, you put my name plus that together. It's like I'm usually done with interviews because I've taken all the time up. So I founded this organization over a decade ago because patients said there was a need. So I, like many who live with autoimmune or autoinflammatory diseases, which are of the immune system, we often are mystery patients first. We look fine. We're young onset. Nobody seems to know what's going on with this fatigue and these unusual gradation of fevers and random jumping pain. So we go through a lot of specialists. So I was no different. And in saying that, I finally got a diagnosis. And when it was originally rheumatoid arthritis, it's changed since, but I was so excited to get a diagnosis only to find out that everybody said, well, you're too young to have arthritis, or that's what my grandmother has. It was also the time where social media, Facebook in particular, started to take off. And I met patients from all over the world. And we had this aha moment. As we were sharing our stories, we all said, well, that's bizarre. You have lupus. You have Crohn's disease. You have psoriatic arthritis. But we all have pretty much the same symptoms, the same journey, the same treatments. Yeah. And so it was this aha moment that patients said, maybe because there's over 100 auto diseases, if we just narrowed them down to only the couple dozen that include inflammatory arthritis, so auto plus inflammatory arthritis, maybe we could expedite detection, diagnosis, earlier treatments because we've narrowed it down by 75%.
Right.
So patients said there was a need. And my background, I was a college teacher for about a decade, but I was also vice president of an architectural firm doing business development and project management. So I knew how to run businesses. And as a teacher, I bought a lot of books and I taught myself how to talk with that to a nonprofit.
Wow.
So that's how we started. I never thought this was going to be my destiny or my journey. I think a lot of us that end up in the nonprofit world, that's not what we initially thought, but that's why I'm here. And so that's how it all started. That's what Ai Arthritis is. And then also I founded more recently, about a year ago, a coalition, disease agnostic. So this one is not specific to our diseases, but that is called Ensuring Access Through Collaborative Health, or EACH, and a coordinating patient inclusion council, or the PIC. And so that is very specific to United States government drug affordability reviews, which I know we'll mention a little bit later as well. So I'm affiliated with both.
So you said a lot, and I am trying to just synthesize and process what you said with regard to discovering your own disease or your own diagnoses. And when you're misdiagnosed first, the patient suffers, sometimes unnecessarily longer, and you spend a lot of money trying to find the right diagnosis. and trying to find the right treatment. you
Yes.
know and so today, we're talking about, let's pull back that curtain, let's get in and get behind the curtain, and we're looking at the barriers that block life-saving care. Right.
Yes.
Is AI arthritis a life-threatening disease?
It depends on the disease.
Mhm.
Some have more potential to have life-threatening complications, lupus being one of them.
Yes.
Also Still's disease, which is a bridge disease there's an adult onset, but there's also systemic juvenile idiopathic arthritis, which of the subgroups of juvenile arthritis is the most severe. So there's a lot of organ involvement in both. And when there's organ involvement, right?
Yeah.
So, but that does not mean that rheumatoid arthritis, spondyloarthritis, any of the others could not also become fatal, because organ involvement, these are systemic diseases. That's one of the misunderstandings when unfortunately the word arthritis, it's usually associated with osteoarthritis, which is what most people will get one day from aging or overuse or injury. And this is a type of arthritis associated with systemic diseases. So that is a component of a much broader disease. So there is a lot more complexity. And I think for us too, to note why we are so invested in this early diagnosis and matching to the right treatments, and do not disrupt our continuity of care if we are on the right treatment, which is a big issue with insurance companies, right?
Yes.
Is that our diseases are driven by uncontrolled inflammation at the cellular level. So that just simply means we've got inflammation that must be controlled. And if it is not controlled, or if it's controlled or suppressed by the wrong medication, and there's still symptoms, it's rerouting itself somewhere else. And that's where we develop multiple diseases. It's not uncommon to find somebody with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, or another autoimmune disease that falls under those 100 plus, very common. Also, it can develop into cancer. We are 4 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's or dementia as we age. So there's a lot of bigger picture thinking here.
Yeah.
Our diseases.
What's the impact in communities of color? I know a lot of times, like with bone health, Black people don't have the highest diagnosis of, bone disease, but Black women suffer at exponentially higher rates than white women who are diagnosed with osteoporosis more frequently. So what does that look like in AI arthritis?
Lupus in particular is one of our conditions that predominantly affects Black women more than other subgroups. So and I do want to take this opportunity, because this is also something that we are focusing on very largely at AI Arthritis, systemic issues and lack of research that includes diverse populations. So we know that lupus disproportionately impacts women of color in that subgroup. I don't think we can say with certainty that the other diseases more or less impact white people. It could be because of access to insurance, going to doctors, who's included in the research studies. So I want to just bring that to the table, just for the sole reason of we need to talk to all people, bring all voices to the table, and find ways to get to everybody so they can speak their truth and can share their stories, so we can get the right information and help the right people. So our work at AI Arthritis, I feel, is only just beginning, because we are moving forward to doing just that. That is one of our biggest strategic goals over the next 3 years, to get as many people with diverse backgrounds to the table so we can make sure everyone is included.
This is one of the reasons that I love you. I do, because, I've said this to you before, in the spaces that we share in this advocacy work, there are times that I, as a Black woman, feel like I'm not heard, even though I have the seat at the table. I don't feel heard at the table. And you have the care, concern, and compassion to be able to reroute the point that I'm making, center me in your understanding of the conversation at large and where there are gaps in the conversation. I just say thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for the sensibility to acknowledge that the data is skewed because the data doesn't include all persons and all lived experiences. So, whew, what an intro, y'all.
Well, I appreciate that, and I will take the opportunity to also add, which I failed to mention in the beginning, AI Arthritis, founded by Patient Voices. Our slogan is, we don't represent the patient voice, we are the patient voice. And as I've put in the effort to build the foundation of the organization, it is by design that all public-facing individuals who are staffed at our organization actually live with our diseases. The other component of that is our mission is about finding missing gaps,
right,
and figuring out who needs to be here to solve them and implement them in a way that is going to impact the patient.
When we're talking about diversifying representation in research, we can't act as if we're living under a rock, and be, patient advocates. And so in the current political climate, when research dollars are being sucked up like a drink through a straw, how are you able to continue to fund the work that you're doing with so many federal dollars being restricted?
We have just launched our AI Arthritis Research Database. So we have always been patient research partners or collaborators in research. This is the first time that we as an organization are going forward to fund our own research. So it is a unique climate to be doing that in, but all of the things we talked about will be incorporated into this database. So making sure, in addition to doing studies that include all people, ours will also be coordinating with additional help or opportunities to continue conversations past just what we collect. In saying that, right now, we are trying to get funding from pharmaceutical companies, but also we're looking at individual donors or companies or universities who might share interest in this, knowing that the federal dollars are not there. So I think, like all, we just have to think differently about where we're going to get support, understanding it's necessary. And I always like to say I say, if you can't walk in the front door, climb in the side window. And that's where I feel like we are right now.
In other words, folks, that is saying we are going to do this work by any means necessary. I love it. I love it. I love it. So we're here talking about the barriers, right, to life-saving care. And so what we know is that utilization management practices, they don't just delay care, they actually deny care for patients. And there are a whole lot of acronyms and words that fall under that, like PBMs, pharmacy benefit manager, step therapy, and the whole kit and caboodle. And these systems are engineered to prioritize actually profits over patients, which is antithetical to everything that you just said, right? And so this episode is talking about how these mechanisms function as silent gatekeepers that ration care and increase mortality. So you've been leading this critical policy research around getting the right patient experience data into government prescription drug affordability reviews. Are these affordability reviews genuinely designed to help patients, or are they primarily structured to serve states and health plans under the guise of patient advocacy?
So these prescription drug affordability reviews started the initiative on the end of the EpiPens and the price gouging that occurred back in around the 2018 era. And it was these boards, in particular in the states, were initiated as a police guardrail to rein in the price gouging. And that's kind of the history. Well, that was a while ago, right? And what they didn't do in the design was think about, well, how are patients thinking about affordability and what are the real challenges that they are experiencing and how can we solve that? So they went for a solution to identify prescription drugs largely to what they think is impacting increased costs to the system without consulting patients and asking them, does this drug cause you financial hardships? And I do want to also mention that financial hardships ebb and flow for a variety of reasons.
Right.
For example, somebody gave me this example. I thought it was wonderful. She said, I used to have a very high paying job, great health insurance. And I never thought about the cost of my prescription drugs. I paid nothing. I lost my job. Things changed. Then I struggled a little bit. Then I got a different job, different insurance. Things started to work itself out. And she said, you know what never influenced that was the retail cost that the state is paying. Never one. It was the same drug, no matter what. For that 5 years, she was on the exact same drug. So why didn't anyone ever ask me, she said, what was causing my affordability challenges and solve those? All of the advertisements that led to the development, all of the efforts that you see in the op-eds say this is for patients. And I think that's what irks me possibly more than anything is they're picked on a systemic level for what helps the system. Then after the fact, you try to get surveys that are very poorly designed, mind you, that do not capture what we call the affordability or unaffordability why, and then try to almost tick a box and say, okay, 8 patients gave us some information without any open-ended responses or clarification of why they might say they're having hardships. That verifies this must be unaffordable, and it's unaffordable. And then the next steps are to decide if they're going to apply a price cap at the top level of what an insurance company might pay for it, what a PBM might pay for it, assuming that those people will share the savings as it trickles down to us. That's the model. and so do I think that this is an issue? I do. And that is why patients, including myself, who are participating in these, starting back at the end of 2023, recognized as participants, the surveys are not capturing why. And they also were not capturing those who could afford and why. Right? Because you must get you can't just look out and say, I'm looking for people to say this is unaffordable without asking them why. Then that's just a check of the box. Okay, great. You proved our point it's unaffordable. Did you? Or did you just prove the point that it will help to cut something for the system? What our survey has done, we decided we needed to launch a patient-directed initiative, a movement, if you will, because nobody was listening to us when we said we need to change the survey. We need to change the way, we need to turn this around and have the efforts driven by patients if patients are indeed the ones we're trying to help. So we took it upon ourselves to go forward and create a patient experience survey with open-ended questions so that we could explore unaffordability and affordability. And one of the stark pieces of this is that when we asked people, how much do you pay for your drug? Whether they said 0 to 10, whether they said 50 to 150, at least somebody, 20% of them said, my drug is unaffordable. But when you look at the big statistic, which our report starts with, which is why we initiated this in the first place, because the statistics were misleading. Just over 50% of all of the 100 participants, or I think it was 71 who answered this question, of those, it was just over 50% said affordable and just under 50% said unaffordable. Those are the types of statistics that these review boards will look at and cite as rationale. Void of exploring the why, you're literally saying just by cutting this retail cost, we're going to solve all of the problems for patients without asking them why. And what we actually found was that when you ask them the why, that patients were actually citing more specific challenges like insurance, like cumulative costs. If you pay $0 to $10 times 10, that's different. That's a different question. And that's also a different situation we must address, right? And so this was very powerful in really shining a light on what's missing in these reviews and challenging If it's about us, it better be about us.
Yeah. We want to pause for a moment to thank our platinum partner, Amgen. Amgen has been a consistent partner who not just talks the talk, they fight hard to illuminate voices and experiences of diverse patients. We're truly thankful for such a beautiful partnership. So where are you now with the survey, and what is your deepest desire for the outcomes of your findings?
Our goal is to get people talking about these results because they are powerful and they have the potential to impact serious change because there are efforts underway to address affordability.
Right.
So it is the prime time not only to have people explore patients matter and their voices matter, and we need to share this. Not only do we want this shared with legislators, which are the decision makers really behind these government reviews, we want them shared with those leading the reviews. We really want them shared with patients because there is a part 2 to this. And we want to make sure that the results from the survey demonstrate to patients the desperate need now to have your voice counted, all voices counted, diverse voices counted to the table to tell your story and your experience with why or why not affordability, unaffordability with the prescription drugs is happening to you. I'll give you a very good example why this is so important from the survey, a question from the survey. We asked of the people who were not currently on the drug, reporting the drug, so those who had stopped, why did you stop the drug? And in the initial survey, there were a lot of check boxes. You could choose the insurance switched me, there were a lot. One of the boxes said cost. I cannot afford the cost. In a traditionally designed survey that doesn't explore the why, it would have appeared that 40% of those people who stopped said, because I can't afford it. Because the other 60, it was side effects or medical reasons. But when we explored, because of open-ended comments and asking them to tell us their why, 100% it was insurance related. And so that no one thought that the people doing the analysis, including myself as a patient research partner, was helping to make sure no one thought we were in any way biasing these, because there is a narrative, because we do get funding from pharmaceutical companies, that we are somehow biasing our responses instead of speaking our patient truths. I attached the raw data from just that question and their answers so that I could prove 100% of people cited insurance.
Wow.
That tells us we are going down the wrong path here. And I also do want to think it's very important just to say, the people who are running these reviews really genuinely want to help patients. 100%. I just want, and their statutes by law are to only currently focus on this one avenue, the retail cost of the drug.
Right.
So when we're looking at how this report can rethink processes, we need to have statutes updated. We need to have the legislators see this is one little tiny piece of a much more complex situation here that must be driven by the patient voice to determine that. I'm not saying we don't have to look at all pieces. I'm not saying we don't have to look at the pharmaceutical pricing as well, but that is such a small piece of what happens for the rest of the system.
Let's bring another voice into this conversation.
Just even speaking of lived experience, those are the groups that are commonly overlooked by policymakers, and that's people with the lived experience of the issue. When I worked in state government, we had this saying about making policy in the ivory tower. Policymakers think they know best and they know better, and so they develop a policy and then try to make those that is supposed to impact fit, and it just doesn't always work.
Be sure to come back and check out Sandra's full episode. Wow. Wow. Tiffany, how many are in your study? How many participants in your study?
There were, this was a pilot. There were 100.
Okay.
71 filled out the majority of the questions.
Okay.
And I want to point out in our next steps, there were significant amount of people who were white.
Okay.
And so I'm going to give a shout out to Vanessa, who is our grassroots advocacy manager at Ai Arthritis. Vanessa, I brought on because she is extraordinarily passionate in her life goals and her career goals to make sure that all voices, particularly those who are people of color, people who are not usually at the table, that is her mission. Mm-hmm. And I said, we need that mission.
Yeah.
So Vanessa is leading the next phase of this data collection, which will be multifaceted. We are going to have matching questions on social media platforms, in potential discussion groups for those who do not use social media. Right. We are really working on an all points effort to make sure that people can weigh in on why their prescription drug is affordable or unaffordable.
We're talking about affordability, unaffordability, and who gets to determine that. I don't know that patients even understand a whole lot of the terms around what makes their drug cost what it is and who is profiting. Can you talk a little bit about utilization management and PBMs, and most patients don't even know what that means or how that impacts their out-of-pocket costs. PBMs are pharmaceutical benefit
Absolutely.
managers. But can you talk about maybe a juxtaposition of what you're offering and bringing to the table versus what's already there through
Absolutely.
utilization management and PBMs and things like step therapy and such?
Absolutely. Well, start by agreeing with you about the complexity, and people using prescription drugs for the most part do not understand why their drug costs a certain amount. Mm-hmm. As far as the utilization management being a good example too of a term that many patients would never understand, right? And we group that together because there's so many things that happen underneath that umbrella when you're accessing a drug. And so one of the things we're trying to do is put things in layperson terms and examples that resonate with you, where you say, oh, that happened to me, instead of saying non-medical switching, mm-hmm. which is when your insurance company asks you to switch a drug for cost to them, cost savings, because that is now their preferred drug. And it does not matter if you have continuity of care, it will save them less money. So they ask you to switch for non-medical reasons. Mm-hmm. That happens to a lot of people. But most people wouldn't understand that. But if I gave them just a scenario, my insurance company just asked me to switch to this drug instead of the one that has been my miracle drug for the last 10 years, people will resonate with that. Mm-hmm. And so I think part of the education and getting this whole program, this whole project, this whole movement together involves that part of education, that part of I understand, that happened to me. There must be a lot of scenarios used in order to get people to understand, first of all, this happened to me. And then from there, why did it happen to you? Okay, well, my insurance company told me XYZ. That is a form of education. It takes a lot longer, but I think that's where we need to be. Mm-hmm. These are complex issues that patients, do they need to understand 100%? No, but they do need to understand if they're experiencing hardships, mm-hmm. what the importance of having them share those experiences can do to change to positive experiences. Mm-hmm. And if they want to learn a little bit more about what it's called or the system, cool. But I don't know if it's necessary for everybody. I just know it's necessary for everyone to share their experiences so that we can make fair and equitable change.
So much. I mean, I could talk to you for another 3 hours. Unfortunately, we don't have that much time. There's just so many things that have come up, and just piggybacking on step therapy, what is so problematic with step therapy, in comparison to maybe, PBMs and other non-medical switching. Did I get it right? Non-medical switching. With step therapy, is that I call it fail first. Right?
Yes.
I know for a fact that this drug does not work for me, but because I'm under a new insurance carrier, I have to go through these steps to prove that these formularies don't work for me in order for me to get to the drug that does, and how much does that cost me as a patient while we're going through these systemic money-making systems for everyone except the patient. So is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to make sure that is included in this conversation?
I'll tie back the non-medical switching to our efforts in the Each Pick in particular when it comes to what happens scenario if they find a drug unaffordable and put this retail price cap on it, because it's relevant, particularly for patients who have what are called therapeutic alternatives.
Okay.
And therapeutic alternatives is a term used in review of comparing different drugs once they get onto market, like in a health technology assessment situation when they first come on and they're deciding, is there value in this drug? Mm-hmm. In the case of these reviews, this is happening at a different part of the life cycle of the drug. These are years after that. And they're still comparing drug A to drug B because they're in the same class, meaning they might target the same mechanism in your body, but they still have other things about them in their makeup that are slightly different, even though they're considered in the same class of drugs. So that's what a therapeutic alternative is. And in these reviews, they are comparing, saying, well, these 5 drugs are in this class. So now they're just looking at the retail cost of what those cost without the value or the subgroups that benefit from a certain drug over another, right? And where this becomes super dangerous is the scenario that I call, what if it works? What if it works? If a review board declares a drug with, let's say, they have 6 other drugs in the same class, and they have this one drug, and they say that is unaffordable. And it goes through the system, and let's just say the insurance companies, the pharmacy benefit managers, they make it a fair, they share the discount. Let's say that happens. Let's say the rebates that are given to the doctors to prescribe that and infusion centers or whomever, the pharmacists who stock them. Let's say that, because sometimes what happens is the pharmacy benefit managers, the benefits are not enough for those people to prescribe or to stock, so they can't, and that equates losing access. Another one of those things that patients don't necessarily think about and how it's getting to you. So let's say that works. Let's say they get enough rebate, it gets down to the patient. And let's say, great, this drug A out of these, all of these that are considered therapeutic alternatives ends up, because of the retail price cap, is the lowest. That means if it is the lowest for all of these insurance companies in that state, they're going to put drug A on their preferred drug list. What happens to everyone else who has the same diagnosis, who is treated with drug B, C, D, E, F, G, who just is going to get non-medically switched because the insurance company is going to come and say, this is a therapeutic alternative. So nobody's thinking of the what if it works scenario. That is one thing I just want people to understand. When you're thinking big picture here, it's not enough to think about that one track. You have to think about everyone who's impacted, who's a patient, everyone, not just drug A. Bigger picture, people.
As we are winding down, all I will say about that is patients are being asked to navigate all of this while being ill.
Yes.
And when you're ill, you just want to feel better. You don't care about all of the things. And so I feel like it's egregious to ask a person who is ill, no matter what the disease state is, right, to fight for their lives, but to also fight to understand these complex systems, these complex terms. And you think that healthcare is on your side, and you go to the doctor with trust in your doctor and with faith in the system, that the system of healthcare can help make you well. I'm just going to land there. I will leave that there. We get into the weeds of stuff, and these conversations can tend to be very heavy. And so I like to end on a lighter note. So here we go. Tiffany, what food would you almost kill someone for? Yep.
Fresh out of the ocean sushi.
Oh,
Fresh. Love raw. Love.
wow. Fresh out of the ocean sushi. What makes you smile?
Friends and family. I know that might be, a cliche answer to some, but it's the truth. And I'm not going to lie, work. People think that's strange, but work makes me smile. I get up on a Saturday morning and the first thing I want to do is grab my coffee and sit down and do some work because I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah. What brings you joy?
I think what brings me joy is seeing anything that I've put out into the universe work. Because I put a lot of effort into and passion into everything I do, and seeing others smile, seeing anything I'm putting out there make others better. That's what makes me tick. That's what brings me joy.
Yeah. And finally, what's your guilty pleasure?
Reality TV. And the more drama, the better.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Once again, thank you so much, Tiffany, for taking time out of your Saturday morning. And now that I know that makes you smile to get up on Saturday morning with a cup of coffee and do a little bit of work. Thank you for sharing a little bit of time with us. And most importantly, again, thank you for educating our audiences and for doing real work that matters.
Yes, thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to No Longer Silent Season 2, Advocacy Leaders Unmuted. Special thank you to our platinum sponsor, Amgen. Thank you for being such a long-time partner and friend in this advocacy space. And none of this would be made possible without our dynamic tribe here at Carrie's Touch. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Angelica. We will see you next time on the next episode of No Longer Silent.